big mountains take big teams. If you get to the top of a mountain and you help somebody else up that mountain, or you meet people in your pursuit and you inspire each other and challenge each other and like grow together or grow on your own missions, it changes the game. Where we need to challenge ourselves as humanity is, how do I make the ordinary extraordinary? How do I slow down enough to see the magic in everyday moments?
Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Drummond, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Jenn, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here. So thank you very much.
I've been admiring your journey and it's just so inspirational. And for our audience, I want to share that you're a world record-setting mountaineer, a successful financial service entrepreneur, and a mother of 7. Before we dive into each one of these key topics, can you tell us more about your 2018 car accident that changed your view on life and that led you to embark on this journey to climb 7 mountains in 7 continents?
Okay, so I was definitely a success seeker. I thought that if I made a whole bunch of money, that I would have no problems in life and everything would be amazing. That target of what a whole bunch of money was kept getting higher and higher, and my joy or satisfaction in life really wasn't moving the needle at all. I hired myself out of a job so I could be a stay-at-home mom with my children. All of a sudden, they started growing up and not needing me as much. And I was stuck in this limbo spot of, what do I do with my time? How do I add value? What do I even want to do with my time? And I told myself this story that once my kids graduated from college or got to college, then I would work on me. But for now, I was just in the season of motherhood, and this is what it would look like. Luckily for me, I got into a car crash, right? Like one of those moments that should have killed me. And I can say luckily didn't, because I'm still here today. And that car accident changed my paradigm. It allowed me to look at life entirely differently and just say, guess what? This gift of life is a gift. And I only get one chance at it, as we know. And I need to make sure that I am living these moments and making the most out of my life. I do not have time to put my life on hold till my kids go to college for I can start living. So that accident really shifted things for me and it allowed me to look at life in parallel, where I could do me and be a mom and be a business owner and do all these other things. Just because I was a mom didn't mean I had to shut down other parts of my personality. So after the accident, I started making a bucket list of things I wanted to do, see, experience, and try. And on that bucket list was climb a mountain. And from there, I took it all the way to set a world record.
How incredible. So tell us a little bit more about the various journeys as you're preparing mentally and physically to actually even embark on your first climb. How did that go? And what was the motivation that truly propelled you forward and created this inner belief that you were able to achieve something that very few people achieve?
So let's rewind this into a couple different pieces. First off, my life before the accident was definitely achievement based, and I needed to take everything to the top and reach the summit. After the car accident, I realized, you know what? Like, who cares if I reach the summit or not? I need to decide if I'm having fun. Do I even like this? Am I enjoying my life? Because this world is a playground of opportunity. What I like is I need to be responsible for that and live those things out. So I kind of had gotten lost into the roles that I was playing and didn't even know what I liked anymore. And so I really wrote down this list of things to start exploring and experiencing life again. And on that list, amongst like thousands of other things, was climb a mountain. I live in Park City, Utah. I'm surrounded by mountains. I'm like, you know what? I'm surrounded by these mountains. Someday I should climb one. And what happened in 2019 was I just allowed myself this entire year to dream and think about things. Like on my list was taste pasta in Italy, swim the Great Barrier Reef. Like I had everything on there that was huge and crazy, and like teeny tiny things of I want to try every restaurant in Park City. I want to try every flavor of ice cream so I know what one's my favorite. Like just things. And so as the end of the year was coming, 2019, I realized in 2020, I was like, hey, I'm turning 40. Like I should look at my list and do something pretty epic for my 40th birthday to launch that next decade of life. And so when I looked over my list, climb a mountain kind of stood out. I'm like, oh, this is only going to get harder as I get older. So I should do this when I'm younger. And I didn't want to limit myself to just mountains by me. I was like, I wanted to do something big. It was a birthday, right? Like you do big things for your birthday. And so when I was there, I asked some friends that were into mountaineering and I said, hey, if you could climb one mountain in the whole world, what mountain would you climb? And a couple friends came back to me and they said, hey, Jen, I would climb this mountain named Ama de Blanc. I'm like, okay, I've never heard of it. Like, well, it's in Nepal. It means the mother's necklace. At the time, I believed that it was the Paramount Pictures logo. I've since learned that maybe it's not the Paramount Pictures logo, but it was sold to me like every single time you go to a movie, you can be like, I climbed that mountain. And I'm like, okay, I go to movies with my kids every once in a while. That would be fun. And so I started training for the Blanc. Well, one day, if everybody rewinds back to 2020, quite early into that year, none of us were traveling anywhere or doing anything awesome or epic because we had this pandemic called COVID enter into our world, and that shrunk all of us to our homes and turned me into a homeschool teacher because my kids weren't allowed to go to school. And I made my kids homeschool. Like I made them do the homework and do the things. And one day, one of my sons was struggling with his math homework. So I did that parent pep talk that we do. We do hard things. You've got this, buddy. And this little guy looks up at me and he goes, Mom, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? And I looked at him. I'm like, I'm a dumb blonde. I'm a dumb blonde. The blonde, honey, not I'm a dumb blonde. Who are you telling this to? And so I was like, taken back. And I said, okay, listen, you finish your homework. We'll look at Everest. So he finished his homework. And we looked at Everest, and he went to bed, and I was still looking at Everest. And I thought to myself, you know what? If this kid thinks Everest is the hardest mountain in the whole world to climb, I'm going to climb it. And I'm going to show him that whatever Everest is, we're capable of summiting. And so I called a coach, right? Like I didn't know anything about it. I had never slept in a tent before. Okay. Like I'm like brand new into mountaineering. But again, the cool thing about deciding that you're going to climb Everest, if you don't make it to the top, okay, whatever, it's Everest, right? Like who climbs Everest? It doesn't matter if you don't make it to the top. It's cool that you even tried. So for me, it was such a big thing that if I didn't succeed, I was still winning. And I think that's like an important thing for all of us. Like when you take on something big enough, just the pursuit of it is the win. Whether you get to the top or not doesn't even matter. And so this coach is like, yes, I can get you ready. Here's what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. So I start training for Everest, and I'm reading this book about becoming an uphill athlete. And I learn of a lady who set a world record for doing something in the Alps. I'm homeschooling 7 kids right now. I don't love being a homeschool teacher, but what I could get my kids to read was Guinness World Record books. They like to read what was going on or who grew the largest pumpkin or who did this or who sailed this or who whatever. I'm like, if I was in the Guinness World Record book, I would be the coolest mom in the whole world. And so I told that to my coach, like kind of nonchalantly in a conversation. He's like, I'll think of a record for you. No big deal. So then he came back to me and he's like, Jen, I have the perfect world record for you. I was like, yeah. He's like, I think you should be the first woman to climb the 7-second summits. Okay, I'm not a mountaineer, so I have no clue what he's talking about. I'm like 7 second, what? Like summits, huh? He's like, listen, it's the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. He's like, it's actually harder than the first 7, and only one person has done it. So you'd be the first woman and second human ever to do this thing. And he goes, if you think about it, 7 continents, 7 mountains, you have 7 children, it'd be a jackpot. And it was one of those whole body yeses. I'm like, yeah, it would be a jackpot. Like, let's do this. I don't know anything about mountaineering, but I'm guessing we'll figure it out. And I think the fact that it was such a big goal and the fact that I had no clue what I was saying yes to, it worked out. It was like a perfect combination to make it happen, because to me, I love to travel. I liked being outdoors. I didn't know all the details of what needed to happen, but I knew I could train my body to do them. And so there we go.
How amazing. And it's so inspirational. And I know you've shared your journey in your book, Break Proof, and you outline several strategies that can help other individuals achieve life and business goals. Can you share with us some of the key strategies that you think would be valuable for our listeners to know?
So, one of the biggest things I learned from climbing mountains and building a successful business and raising children was big mountains take big teams. Okay. I didn't climb Everest by myself. There were people at home taking care of my kids. When I was at Everest, there was people that set up tents and made food and ordered the permits and brought oxygen bottles places and all these different things for me to be able to stand on the top of Mount Everest. And it just made me realize, when we set these big goals to build these big companies or to get a raise at our current employer or whatever that is, there's a lot of people that need to be involved if the goal's big. And I think a lot of us think we can do it by ourselves. And when we try to do it by ourselves, we run out of energy or we get tired. We start to compromise and say, okay, well, maybe I didn't want that goal. I want this goal because it's more attainable or whatever else like that. And so I highlight that point of big mountains take big teams, because if you ever get that moment of doubt or that question of like, should I continue or should I stop, or is this even the right thing? Instead of stopping or pivoting or slowing down, I want you to ask yourself, like, is there somebody that can help me? Is there somebody I can add to my team to make this easier, to make this happen, to do this kind of stuff? Because when I went out to climb Everest, I didn't know anything about climbing Everest. So I brought people into my world that knew how to climb Everest, that had climbed Everest before, that coached people to climb Everest before, that did whatever. Because when you start normalizing your goal, like, hey, I'm going to climb Everest, with people that have climbed it before, it becomes really tangible and real. If I kept my world with all the people that I lived with and surrounded myself with before that goal, Everest would have been like the craziest thing ever, because no one's done it. No one knows anybody that's done it. Why would you want to go there and do that? And so when we take on these goals or we set these big goals for ourselves, understanding that big mountains take big teams helps you get to the top.
You often refer that it's not so much about success, but rather seeking significance. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
When you climb a mountain, and if you get to the top of it and you're at the top of it by yourself, it's pretty lonely, right? You're kind of like, okay, here I am. Woohoo, yay me. But if you get to the top of a mountain and you help somebody else up that mountain, or you meet people in your pursuit and you inspire each other and challenge each other and grow together or grow on your own missions, it changes the game. And so I really realized success is temporary and it's lonely and it's boring and you're always seeking the next thing. But if you make your goal significant, where you involve others, where you help others, where you share the pursuit with others, and you all get to the top of the mountain, there is so much more to celebrate, and there's people to celebrate with. And so I always look at my pursuits now of, okay, if I'm going to go from A to B, who can I bring it with me? Who do I want to build this with? Who do I want to do this with? Who do I want to elevate? right? When I started climbing mountains, I started getting involved with different charities so that I could help raise money for their causes and so that we could both benefit from this pursuit that I was doing. There is so many ways to turn whatever you're doing into something more than success and to have that title of significance.
And as a result of your journeys and experiences, how do you define joy today? And what would you say is a recipe for joy in order to bring more of that joy into our respective lives?
I think collaborating with others, helping others. I've been to some of these mountains now, and other people are looking at doing this pursuit. I love sharing stories or tips or ideas or different things to help make their journey easier. So I think joy is found in sharing and collaborating and helping other people on their pursuit. I love it when people ask me for help because I love to be able to give help and help them on their journey. I think a lot of times we forget how much fun it is to help others when we need to ask for help. And so when you can learn to ask for help and say, hey, can you lighten this load, or can you do this, or can you give me this tip, or what do you think about this idea? It just makes the experience shared, and in sharing, we find joy.
Beautiful. I want to talk about your 7 kids
Yeah.
and how that experience as a mother has shaped and inspired you even before you started achieving all these Guinness World Records. What can
Yeah.
you share with us about your journey as a mother?
I will tell you, when you have kids, it changes everything. I know it sounds cliche, but it is so true because you look at this little human and you think, oh my gosh, I brought you into this world. I want to help you succeed. I can't wait to see what you do with your life and how you want to live it and what you want to do with it. And so for me, having kids, it's been this real accountability partners. And it really makes me reflect on who I am, how I'm showing up, what I'm doing. Am I leaving the world a better place for them? Am I teaching them the skills that they need to have so they can bring their dreams and their ideas to life? So my kids are my why, 1,000%, and they really keep me grounded into what matters.
And how did you juggle all these various responsibilities from founding your company to raising the kids? I know you shared about surrounding yourself with key people around you to really help you along the way, but tell us more about that balancing act that you were doing, basically, that you've shared a little bit about how that journey evolved during the 2020 COVID pandemic. But tell us about before, as you were starting your business, starting a family. What were some of the questions and challenges that you faced, and how were you able to overcome them to say, yes, I can build a family, I can build a successful business, and really move forward with some of the key ambitions that I have as a human being?
I think pain becomes our purpose. So let me dive into that a little bit more. I'm a driven person. I think every human alive is driven, but I think some of us are more driven than others. And I think drive is something that we can develop. When you find something you're passionate about, it's hard to slow me down. Just like anybody, right? Like when you find something you love, like you want to lock and load and do as much of it as you can. So for me, when I got into finance, helping people with their money and watching them be able to enjoy their lives and not be stressed about something that was stressing them before, it was really motivating for me. And I just wanted to help more people and more people and more people, because the more I helped, like you just felt the ripple effect, right? It gave me so much back for helping them and giving them that peace of mind. And then when I had kids, I was like, oh, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like I want to watch them teethe and walk and do all these little things that they get to do as little people. And so I couldn't do both. So when I started having kids, I'm like, oh man, I can't do as much work if I want to be here at home. So I need to hire myself out of a job. So I started looking at my calendar and think, okay, what do I not need to do? What can be done by somebody that doesn't need to be done by Jen? And so then I would hire somebody that would start doing those tasks so that I had more free time. And then when I added another child, it was like, okay, now I need to hand off more from the business because I have more, two at home. And that just kind of, it was an evolution. So it wasn't this one night everything turned over. It was over the course of years, as kids got added into the picture, responsibilities from work got taken away. And I always kept some stuff for work because I liked the feedback. I liked doing adult conversations. I liked the instant gratification that a business has. Kids are long-term strategies, right? I don't know if I'm doing a good job until they start contributing to society. So it gave me that like short-term satisfaction of, hey, I'm contributing, I'm adding, and I'm home with my children. So that was magical. Once the kids got older, I realized I don't really want to go back into that career and have my entire life story be in one field. I have so many different parts of my personality that I want to explore and experience and have a chance to share with the world. So the mountaineering thing kind of came about unexpected, and I had to work that into my calendar. So I literally would meet with my coach on a weekly basis and say, okay, here's my work obligations, here's my kid obligations, figure out how to fit my fitness obligations in there. And my coach was like, there's no space. You're not climbing anything. I'm like, well, we have to climb something. So what are we going to do? And so when you have that like frustration or that gridlock where it's not working, that causes you to get creative. And so, yeah, would an ideal training plan be I get to train for 8 hours a day and go hike mountains all over the place? 1,000%. That was not my reality. I had kids and a business to run. So I would sometimes go to a soccer practice and bring a 12-inch step to practice. And I would just go up and down on that step so I could watch my kid play and I could get exercise in. Was it 8 hours in a row? Nope. It was an hour and a half. An hour and a half is better than nothing. And so you really start to look at what's ideal and then what's reality. And you work with reality and you let go of ideal. And you like cross contaminate, I guess is the word you could use, as much as possible. So I would work out with my kids as much as possible. I would wake up early so that I could train before they got up. I would work out while they're at school. If I had a business meeting, I would take it on the treadmill and put it on a Zoom so that I could listen to what was going on, but still be able to get like at least some steps in. So I think when we want something bad enough, we figure out how to make it happen.
And I want to touch on the point of reality. As you are imagining how you're going to be climbing your first mountain or your second mountain or even the seventh, there's always sometimes a gap between what we imagine and the reality as we actually show up on that mountain. Can you share with us some moments or stories that truly made you rethink all the training and all the steps and all the mental and physical preparation that you had undertaken for months before that? Because I imagine there must have been moments where there was this disconnect between, I didn't imagine it to be like this, and the reality is turning out to be completely different.
Oh my gosh. It was so different. Every single time it was so different. And it makes you laugh. Like truly it makes you laugh on what you think it's going to be and what it actually is. And I'm so grateful for social media ahead of time where you get to see these like Pinterest fails, right? Where you see this like beautiful birthday cake that somebody made, and then you watch the mom's version of what that birthday cake is, and it hardly resembles the original, right? And so having those stories of others in my mind, I'm like, okay, I literally thought that we'd have bluebird skies. It'd be gorgeous out. Maybe the breeze would make my hair look pretty when I'm hiking, all that stuff. And you're out there, it's blowing sideways. You can't see 2 feet in front of you. Like it is like the most hideous adventure ever, right? But the crazy thing is that no one asks about those details. All they ask is like, did you get to the top? No one cares if you crawled to the top or you had to like butt scoot down the mountain or like, and no one asks those details. They just want to know if you get the job done. And so for me, it was like, okay, this doesn't look like I thought it was, but I'm getting the job done. I took another step. I took another step. I took another step. And you just celebrate these little steps because those little steps are what get you up the mountain.
And did you ever think, after facing reality from your first climb or your second climb, that that's it, I'm stopping here? Or were you so driven and determined from this from the start, as you said, 7 kids, 7 peaks, that's really my goal, no matter how hard, how difficult this is going to be?
It is hard and it is difficult, and 1,000% I wanted to quit. And I wanted to say, I'm done with this, or I'm not interested in this, or like, what was I thinking? Like, I could spend this money and go sit on a beach. Why am I spending this money to go suffer and climb a mountain? But the thing that kept me going is I would travel to different countries to climb. And when you travel to different countries to climb, you realize we are really privileged as women in the United States, like truly privileged. I can have a checking account, I can drive a car, I can run a company, I have so much privilege compared to global availability for women. And so when I would come into these countries and I would meet these women that live a life of less privilege, I wasn't climbing these mountains for me. I was climbing these mountains for them. I wanted them to see that, hey, listen, I see you. I'm doing this to bring awareness of what's possible for women, because I want you to know what's possible for you. It might not be you, but I know that by me climbing and being in this environment, I'm shifting things. And so there might be more opportunity for your daughter or your granddaughter. And when you connect into something so much bigger than yourself, the rainstorms, the blisters, the horrible food, all that stuff, it doesn't matter, because I get to come home to a refrigerator and a car and vacations and this beautiful life. And that's their every day. And so it just gives you this why that you're like, I have no place to complain.
And while at the peak, I want to ask you, have you experienced a moment of awe, not only awe in your own abilities and the team that helped you along the way, but awe of the beauty that we have on this earth that often we overlook?
Yeah. I get goosebumps still when I think about some of the summits, because you know it's coming, right? Like you know you're steps away from this thing that you put so much effort and time and energy and yourself into. And when these steps, like these last couple, come and you take that last step, and then when you're on that last step, you take the deepest breath you possibly can, because you want that moment to last as long as possible. And in that inhale, the world disappears. There's no sky, there's no mountain, there's no me, there's no distance, there's no time. You're just this moment of awe. There's not another word for it. Like, you use the word awe because that's what it is. And then when you exhale, like, life starts to return, right? You can feel the cold breeze, you can see the sun, you feel the mountain underneath your feet, and you just have, like, life comes back to reality. And you sit there and you're so humbled by the magic of life, by the fact that we can have these desires and bring them to reality. And so before you leave that mountain, it's almost like telling your soul, hey, go, I'm throwing you out into the world and I'm going to find you again. I don't know where I'm going to find you. I don't know how I'm going to find you. I don't know what I'm going to be doing when I find you. But the whole point of life is to experience it. And so you throw your soul out there, you head down the mountain, and you go take on new tasks. You show up in new places in the world, you connect with new people, and that energy that you have affects everybody that you encounter. And you know that, so you keep pursuing things, because in the pursuit, we find the joy.
And in those pursuits and on those journeys, you alluded to the women that you've encountered along the way and how their lives is significantly different than ours. What other key insights from a cultural perspective have you gained as a result to traveling to all these different locations? And how has that shaped your view also on joy across cultures?
So it's so fascinating to travel to different places and see different ways of doing life. I remember going to Nepal in between holidays here in the United States, in between Halloween and Thanksgiving. So before I left for this trip, I was packing up all of our Halloween stuff: skeletons, spiders, plates, pumpkins, pillows, like everything you could think of that would scream Halloween on it. And then I was pulling out of bins and tubs things with turkeys and feathers and Thanksgiving and like all these things to signify that we're in Thanksgiving. And then I head to Nepal, and there's zero signs of any kind of crazy holiday going on, right? No one is spending time organizing things, filing things, buying things, throwing things away. They are literally just spending time with each other, connecting, cooking, gardening, doing whatever, having relationships with other people instead of things to decorate. And I just remember coming home from that expedition, and when my mom brought in like all the tubs to store all the stuff, I was like, no, we're done. I'm not spending hours of this by myself when I could be connecting with other people and having conversations and like doing things that have value. And so we got rid of all of that decor and all of that excess because I wasn't happy. I was miserable putting it together and pulling it away and making sure it looked perfect and all this silly stuff. And I saw these two little women that were just sitting there having a tea and a little cookie together, smiling, and they smiled at me. We couldn't even speak the same language, but we could feel the love for each other. And I was like, I need more of that in my life. And so by traveling, we get to look at our own story and say, okay, what's serving me? And what am I doing out of habit that's maybe keeping me from being my best self? And when we go to other cultures, we see other ways that people spend their time, other things that they value. And we get to collide both of those worlds together into our own new world and show up more authentically as ourselves.
As you've shared in the past, also you take time for yourself after such experiences, just because of the overwhelm and I imagine the insights and the experience is just so overwhelming and filled with awe, as you just shared before, that you actually make sure that you take some time away to absorb and integrate and have these inner reflections. Can you share with us why this is so essential for you rather than literally, getting off the mountain and going back to the life that you're currently living and the 7 kids?
My life here is so busy and so demanding. And it's interesting because my first mountain expedition, I was away from home longer than I'd ever been away from home. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. And this is going to be terrible. And is everybody going to be okay? And is this even a good mom thing to do? Like, all these stories that I had constructed in my head. And so I was gone for 10 days and I came home. Everybody was super excited to see me. We had a celebration cake. We hung out. And the next day, life was back to normal. It was as if I wasn't even gone. And the entire time I was gone, everybody got to soccer practice. Everybody ate dinner and school was taken care of just fine. And it just made me realize, like, I'm not as important as I think. Like the world goes on whether Jen's there or not. And the only thing that I can do is make sure that I'm honoring these journeys and these experiences and these learnings and these takeaways. And if I come back home too fast, I don't get that space to say, okay, what did I learn about myself? What do I want to have be a part of my story? What do I want to share with others? What did this experience teach me? And when you give yourself that space to understand these things and to integrate these things, you get to show up with more intention. And your life just gets to be more and more yours because you're reflecting. You're not always in this go mode. And I think our society really rewards go mode, right? Like they love the highlight reels. They love everything pretty. Well, that highlight reel has a whole bunch of story that you're not seeing right now. And if we take clues from nature, we have seasons. We have spring, summer, fall, and winter. And it's fun to be in summer because we're in full bloom and everything's pretty and gorgeous. But to be in summer We have to have a fall where we get rid of things that don't serve us any longer, where we let go of those stories. We have to have a winter where we hibernate and think like, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up as? And then that spring season where we get to start blooming and sharing those ideas. And in the summer where it's full cycle. And so when we learn to honor those cycles within our own stories, our life becomes so much richer and deeper, and so much more joy shows up.
And I want to ask you a question now about joy, actually. And what I've learned is through research that really dives deep into the neuroscience of joy. Whenever we have these phenomenal experiences that are just so profound and so moving, the neurochemical reactions at the level of the brain are heightened to a level that is extraordinary. And when you come back into the real world and day-to-day life, the things that maybe appeared interesting before are not as interesting, at least from what science is showing, just because we had such a high that now we struggle to find awe in those small, unique moments, or to find the joy in little things in life. What can you share with us about your personal experience? Have you actually experienced this as well, or it's not the case at all?
I think when we are honest with ourselves, the big things take care of themselves, right? When you're going to climb Everest, it's an extraordinary experience and it's so amazing. That's easy, right? Disney World's easy. Vacations are easy. That's an easy place to find this magic. Where we need to challenge ourselves as humanity is, how do I make the ordinary extraordinary? How do I slow down enough to see the magic in everyday moments? When I first got out of my car crash, it was so ingrained, like everything was magical, right? Because everything was a bonus moment. I almost didn't get to have Christmas again, or I didn't get to call my grandma, or I didn't get to take my kids to the bus stop, or I didn't get to have tea with my girlfriend. Like all those things were done if I would have died. And so the fact that I was alive, like every moment was amazing because it was better than not having it. And I remember the kid's principal calling me once and he's like, hey, your son was acting up in school. We wanted to tell you about it. We need to take care of it. I'm like, oh, thank you so much for calling. I'm so grateful. And he's like, I thought you'd be a little more mad. I'm like, I'm just so grateful I was here to be able to take your call. Because had my car accident gone a different way, I wouldn't even be here for this phone call. And the fact that my son's pushing buttons, I'm sorry. Like, yes, he needs to learn his limits and behave and all those kinds of things. I'm just so happy I'm here to watch it. I'm so grateful I get to see him grow and change and figure out how he solves problems. So for those of us that are listening today, the extraordinary is extraordinary. That's why it has that label. The challenge to living a full, happy life that's filled with joy is turning these ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. And you do that by being fully present.
And what have the kids taken away from all these journeys that you've been on? How have you seen them grow and change and just emerge into these beautiful human beings that are looking at life as a very different lens as a result of how they've been watching you accomplish the impossible?
Our kids are watching. Like, you can give them lip service of, hey, I'm happy. But if you're not happy and thriving and loving life, they know it. They know the energy of that output. And so when I stepped into goals that were challenging and hard and pushing my limits and like me finding out who I was and what I needed to improve on, they saw that in action. And so it gave them permission to be able to fail or struggle or to figure things out because they saw their mom doing it. And then when they saw their mom doing something where it's like, hey, they knew I didn't sleep in a tent before. They knew I didn't know how to do all these things. I mean, they were there with me. I went to a climbing class and I took a couple of them with me and they were better than I was. Right. And I was like, oh, they're like, Mom, you got to get better. You're not going to make it up any of these mountains, you know? And so when they watch that entire journey and get to be a part of it and a witness of it, my kids' confidence, I mean, it's out of this world. They don't know how to do something like, oh, no big deal. I'll figure it out. I just need more time. And I think that changes when you as a parent are thriving and happy and excited because you give your kid permission to be the same.
So, what's your next summit in your life
Yeah.
that you're most excited about moving forward?
So right now I'm really excited about putting together like a mini mastermind and sharing some of the lessons I had with other people and just to get to be a part of their journey and cheerlead them on their pursuit because I know my experience will add a lot of value to whatever they're doing, building a company, starting a family, moving, all those big things. So I'm super excited about that. I love speaking on stages. So that's been really fun for me. I'm sure another athletic endeavor will show up, but right now I'm just enjoying like sharing the experience with others and helping them with their goals.
And how can people learn more about everything that you do and potentially even attend some of the workshops and also tap into your book? Can you share your website for everyone?
Okay, so my website is jenndrummond.com. And an easy way to get into my network is if you text the word Everest to 33777, you're going to get a video of the Milky Way galaxy going over Everest Base Camp. And that I want you to keep on your phone because anytime life gets overwhelming or hard, you can look at that video and remind yourself, like, oh, this world's huge. It can hold my problems. I'm okay. And then you'll get into our network and you'll get emails and you'll get updates. You can follow me on LinkedIn, but check that out or definitely email us or go visit jenndrummond.com and we'd love to help you with whatever you're pursuing.
And what is one small, joyful adventure you would challenge everyone listening today to try this week?
So if you're listening today, I think one of the most beneficial things that you can do is when you're brushing your teeth in the morning and brushing your teeth at night, look at yourself in the mirror and say positive things. We call it our toothbrush talk here. So you're going to say, I'm a nice person. I'm helpful. I'm beautiful. I'm strong. I'm powerful. And at first, it's going to feel awkward. And then after you practice it for a few days, you're going to start to own it and you're going to start to be it. So I think the biggest thing we can do is say, I'm joyful. I deserve a joyful life. I'm living a joyful life. That will start to happen when you tell yourself it's happening multiple times a day.
And any final words of wisdom as to how our listeners can live more joyfully and also to help them basically find the strength and the courage so they can pursue their own personal summits?
Yeah. I think the most important thing we can do for ourselves is be kind to ourselves. Okay. You're your number one cheerleader. So if you can be kind to yourself, you're going to become stronger. When we break an arm, we don't get mad at that arm and yell at it and blah, 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 blah. We put it in a cast and we nurture it and we love it. So you need to do the same thing with your emotional intelligence and your mental strength. Is being kind to yourself is actually going to make you stronger.
Jenn, thank you so much for everything you have shared. It's been a true joy to spend this time with you.
Thank you for the opportunity.